G'day folks, MBS here, talking about cooling systems in part 2. A little bit of diagnostic work of why your engine could be overheating. Now first up, I'm going to start off with the older vehicles, okay, the ones with thermostats around about the 70-80 degree mark. Once we start getting up into the higher thermostat temperatures, it's a little bit more reactive on your part than proactive. At least when the temperature starts off low and it's overheating slightly, you can be proactive and try and get it before it gets too bad. So we've got an 80 degree car, say, my car, okay. You're travelling along, it starts to overheat, okay. Depending on the gauge you've got, okay, if you've got an old gauge, just the light, I'm afraid you're going to be reactive, because when the light comes on, you're already going to be panicking and going, oh, my car's overheating, and you're going to have to pull over and go from there and work out what's going on. If you've got a proper gauge that tells you the actual temperature in degrees, you're way in front of the game. Okay, you can catch things pretty early if you're a gauge watcher. I don't have to be a gauge watcher because the gauge I've got alarms and flashes as soon as I hit 95 degrees. Now 95 degrees is an important figure for you guys that are running the lower temperature thermostats, because that gives you time to do something. So you're going to be proactive and stop it getting to 100, okay? You do not want to go to 100 degrees. The reason for that is, if your pressure cap has failed, your water will boil at 100 degrees. So 100 degrees is the benchmark for all vehicles, early or late. You do not want it to go over 100 because you are not 100% sure if your radiator cap is actually working. If the cap was working, obviously it's a totally different story, and we'll cover that into the next section when we're dealing with 95 degree thermostats. Alright, so you have your car, okay, you're sitting at the lights, it's starting to overheat. You can see it on your temperature gauge, or you could see it in your readings, and you're getting up to 190 and still climbing. I'm in Fahrenheit at the moment. Okay, let's go 90 degrees Celsius. Because yeah, I'm both me, and I can do Fahrenheit or Celsius. Alright, so we're up there. It's 10 degrees hotter than what it should be, and you want to get proactive, and you don't want it to get any higher. So what do you do? Okay, what's the best thing to do here? At 90 degrees you could pull over and have a bit of a gander around and see if you can spot something. So you know, you'd be looking for the obvious stuff. Any water leaks you can actually see. It might be a little pinhole and you might actually see the water coming out. So the temperature's going up, obviously, because you're running low on water. Now, of course, you've got to remember your temperature gauge won't work when there's no water. So yeah, had this gone a little bit longer and you didn't see the gauge going up, in all likelihood, another 3 or 4 minutes later, the gauge would come back down to normal and below, and you'd think everything's fine. But when in point of actual fact, you're cooking your motor. So unfortunately you can't do much about that unless you've got an early warning device built into the gauge, like I have on mine. You'd have to be a gauge watcher all the time, and that's a little bit unfortunate. I thought technology would have gone way ahead. Even though these cars are from the 60s and 70s, you'd think they would have come up with something. So yeah, look, you've pulled over, pull the bonnet obviously, have a look around. I'd be checking that there's pressure in the system first up. If you've got pressure in the system, fantastic. You don't have to be in panic mode as much, okay? Because the water's not going to boil at 100 degrees. Well, under pressure it's going to be much higher than that. So while you're mucking around looking at things and the engine's idling away and the temperature's still going up, you've still got room to move. So yeah, like I said, leaks, check the front of your radiator, see if there's something blocked it. You could pick up any piece of crap off the road and block the radiator. Have a quick look at your reservoir bottle, see if there's water in it. More than likely there would be from the expansion, but if you've actually got a leak, that expansion may not have actually happened. And to be honest with you, if you've got depending on the size of the leak, you probably wouldn't have as much pressure in your radiator, top radiator hose, if you've got a leak, because that pressure would bleed off. So there's a chance that when you hop out that the hose might be soft. So in that case, no pressure in the system, you can take your radiator cap off, yeah? Yeah, so there's really no chance that the water is boiled yet, with no pressure in the system, and you're not hearing any gurgling in your overflow reservoir. You can safely take the cap off, have a look inside, and see if you're losing water. Alright, so that's fairly easy. Because you were proactive, you got to it early, and it's under 100 degrees, you can catch this stuff early. And even if you did have pressure in there, you could still relieve the pressure if you knew. I mean, you've got to know your temperature is not at 100 degrees, so you must have a gauge that reads actual temperature. Then you could relieve the pressure, take it back to its first click, radiator cap, and once the pressure is relieved, take your cap off, have a look inside. Okay, see if it's low. Alright, if it's full of water, okay, you've got a different problem. You haven't got a leak, you've just got a cooling system problem that's not managing to cool the water down. So, you know, check your fan belt, check your radiator fan. If you've got one of those hydraulic fans like I've got in mine, it spins freely. It should be spinning, and it should be spinning hard. Especially if you're running at a higher temperature, it'll lock up more and spin faster. We've covered leaks, okay. That's about all you can do. It's unlikely it's a water pump, okay. Water pumps are most unlikely. They can be if you're not running inhibitor or corrosion inhibitor in your engine, and it's been like that for many years. The impeller could be corroded and you're just losing flow. But that sort of catches up on you slowly, that sort of diagnostics. So yeah, this wouldn't be a one-off occurrence, it would be a constant thing, slowly happening all the time. Your engine's overheating even when you're travelling along. You could suspect water pump. But from my experience, it's usually a broken fan belt, a loose fan belt, something like that. Now another common place you'll find a leak is out of the water pump itself. Underneath the water pump there is a hole, and that's a drain hole to allow the water to bleed out from the bottom. And you'll see that on your harmonic balancer. You'll probably see coloured water there, or rusty water, depending on the condition of your water and your cooling system. So you could most definitely check that. Now of course check your heater hoses going into the firewall. Even check inside the car. Sometimes you can spring a leak in your heater inside the car and the floor will get wet. So you could be losing water there as well. Now look, on the odd occasion you may even have a thermostat that's playing up, has failed to open up and it's restricting the water flow. You can get an increase in temperature there as well, but you're not going to be able to do anything about that on the side of the road, obviously. So that's about all I can think of. So basically the general rule is, if you've still got water in the system, the radiator is full, and you've still got water in the reservoir, and you're overheating, you've got a flow problem, okay, or a radiator problem. There's not much else it can be, unless, and very unlikely you've blown a head gasket or done something like that. Head gaskets will go when you've cooked your motor. Okay, so if you haven't cooked your motor at all that you know of, you can rule that one out. So yeah, look, you'd be talking thermostat, you'd be talking flow through the radiator. Okay. Another thing, one more thing you could probably check is check your bottom radiator hose hasn't collapsed. There's usually a spring wound up inside your bottom hose to stop them crushing in, but I have seen them. I've seen them totally flat, and that's happened in my bus once. So yeah, if a flat hose can't suck water through the radiator very well, so you'll get a lack of flow, and of course that'll overheat. So that's just another thing you could check. But apart from that, this would be make sure, well, not only do you have to carry water with you, I would definitely be taking a 5 litre container of water with me wherever I go. But in this case you don't need water, you just need for it to cool down a bit, so sit on the side of the road, have a smoko break. Start her up and get her home and get her to a radiator shop and well, pull your radiator out and get that checked out first, pull your thermostat out, have a look at it, you can test that. And that's about all you could do in that situation. Let's talk about a term called heat soak. What it actually does is the water temperature will rise when you turn your engine off. Okay? I don't know if you'd use that or not, but in a late model vehicle that is very evident because the thermo fans cut in after you turn the engine off and you walk away from the vehicle, you'll hear your thermo fan cut in. Well, that's heat soak. The temperature has risen to a set point where the thermo fans will cut in. That's fairly important to know, especially when you're sitting on around about 95 degrees, nearly ready to overheat. You do not want to be removing the cap or doing any such foolish things like that, because if you've turned your engine off, you're going to start getting heat soak, and you may, if you're not aware of that, then you may end up scolding yourself if you go ahead and try and take the cap off. So yeah, be very mindful of that one. The other thing I just wanted to finish off on is if you've gotten up to that 90-95 degrees and you want to control that, but you don't know if you've got a leak, you've done all your checks, you've looked around, you can't see any leaks, well, you're going to have to find out if it's a cooling problem or it's actually a leak, and you're only going to find that out if you take the radiator cap off. So what you need to do, if the system is under pressure, you've felt the hose and it's got pressure, like I said earlier, you're unlikely that you've got a leak, but who knows, grab yourself a towel. Do not take this cap off without a towel. Throw it over the radiator, okay, cap, and push down and twist that cap off into its first location. Just don't unwind it all the way because it'll just boof. Click it off onto the first click and pressure will be relieved. Then you can take your towel away. Radiator cap's more likely going to be hot, and you can have a look down in there and see if you've got water. Okay, I think I've alluded to this earlier, that if you've got water in there, then you're chasing a cooling problem. If there's no water in there, now's the time to put some water in there, okay, so that you're not stranded. You could sit back and wait, okay, have a smoko, wait for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour for the engine to cool down, and then you can put some water in it slowly. Start the engine, you've got to start the motor of course, and slowly feed water in. But if you're in a hurry, got to get there, you could put water in it right now. It's not boiling, but it is hot, so you've got to add your water in slowly. Okay, and we're talking here a cup at a time, just 1 cup, get it in there nice and slow. Okay, that's 1 cup done. Alright, that's the sort of rate you want to get the water in there, and then after you've put a couple of cups in, just hang for 30 seconds or so, and then put another couple of cups in. It's a slow process. If you've got a gauge inside, you can actually keep an eye on this, walk around, have a look at your gauge, see if it's actually coming down. If it's coming down, fantastic. You can keep doing that process until you filled her up and get where you're going to, or home, or whatever the case may be, and then start looking around for leaks, because you've obviously got a leak if you're putting water in it. Now look, you could always try another little trick, and that is not to fit the radiator cap on properly. Alright, if you've got a small leak, that small leak is coming out because the expansion of the water, and it's the pressure that's forcing that water out. Depending on where the leak is and how severe it is, you may get away with just leaving your cap loose after you've topped it up. Alright, just to the first click, you put it on, but you don't lock it completely off, you just put it to a safety first catch. That will stop the system building pressure. Not that you'd probably build pressure anyway because of the leak, but when the water expands, rather than trying to force it out of the leak, it may expand just into the tank. Depending, like I said, depending where the leak is, whether it's high, whether it's low. that may help you out getting a few more kilometres out of your vehicle before you have to pull over and top it up again. Alright, so it might just get you home. Okay, so don't try that on a late model vehicle. I don't think that would work. You're too close in thermostat rating, like 95 degrees, to get away with that one. It might not work for you. But that's just a little trick that I've done it once myself personally, and I know a few people that have also done it that I've helped out on the side of the road. Miles away from anywhere, and they had to get to the nearest town to get their leak fixed up. Yeah, I've advised leave the cap loose and see how you go, see how many Ks you can extend your trip before you have to pull over. So of course, look, you've got to watch that temperature all the time, because now that the cap is loose, you do not want to get close to 100 degrees, because as you know, the water's going to boil off. Alright, so look, I'm going to split this video now before we move into part B of this section, because this has just gone on long enough, so I'll split it to make it easy to watch. Alright, I'll see you in part B.